photo is the test that Mr. Bly used. So I could have given that as your test.
So it's probably really
No,
hard.
you
One
actually
minute.
missed the point. No, I looked through it. It was actually really nice. Like it made sense. I was like, oh, I know what this means. Oh, that's
Yeah.
like it was nice.
So we're
I
gonna
should
do
look at that.
we're gonna do your tests. Yes.
I still can't get in Edmodo. Like, I put in the code and it keeps telling me it's wrong.
Okay. I think it changed when I locked it. So see me at the front desk
Okay.
after.
Did you approve me?
I did.
Awesome.
I sent you yesterday. Yes, you and also Madeline Holberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, no.
You're just not ready for this.
So the test is going to be over 2 days, and it's going to cover chapters 1 through whatever we get through.
Oh, that's so
Tomorrow.
scary.
But okay,
2-day test.
it's, think of it this way: the
Okay.
more problems, the more points. The more
Yes.
points, the more you can miss and still pass.
That's such a good way to
Right.
That's a good point.
And also, our classes are only a half hour, so if you were taking
Yeah.
econ in a regular public school, it would be
Oh,
just one period.
They must have really long tests at regular school.
No,
Yeah.
it's about the same size.
Oh,
Well,
really?
yeah, but like you also,
I guarantee you guys are way more attentive and into it than public school.
yeah.
Okay. So Tuesday, since you guys couldn't decide between Tuesday and Wednesday, we're just going to do both.
Great.
So Tuesday will be vocab. So go through your homeworks that I had you write in, like definitions and graphs. And then there'll also be multiple choice. And then on Wednesday, it's going to be pretty much all graphs. So
Is it like
to look forward
just
to.
what the graphs are saying, or drawing graphs, or?
Probably both.
Ah,
Or I'll like provide like the axes and then you'll have to put in.
okay. Oh, that's not bad. All right.
I think I can do that.
Are
So
there
this
any
is-
essay questions? Sorry,
Not
No,
yet.
it's cool.
No,
I
I
think I
can
can do
handle
that.
those. The graphs are what confuse me.
Yeah.
It takes forever to read.
It's okay if you
No,
don't have
I like
them.
that.
Google that.
It's totally fine if you don't have to take questions.
Mac, any input?
Essay questions are the way to go.
No.
Like
it's your birthday, but no.
Wait, is your birthday?
Yeah.
Happy birthday! I won't give you any homework today.
Okay.
Just you. Everybody else gets it. I'm just kidding. I'm having a birthday. Okay. So, is everyone here now? Well, Mrs. Graham's gonna try and get our PowerPoint up.
It's on the box, so.
Yeah, it's under PowerPoint, Econ PowerPoint 5, chapter 5.
Oh, it's asking me for your. I'll look away when you type in your password.
That made me do it.
No.
So today, we're gonna review price ceiling and price floor, because we kind of cut off yesterday. What do you remember about a price ceiling and price floor? What happens? What causes it?
A price ceiling is when the government says that firms cannot sell anything higher than a certain price, and then that causes a shortage because they're not able to make enough. And then a price ceiling is when the government says they can't do any, like, or firms can't sell anything lower than that price, and so there's a surplus because it's too much.
You mean price floor. You said price ceiling.
Oops, price floor for the second one.
I knew what you meant.
Okay.
Alright, and then if you click the edit button on like the pencil in the screen,
Oh,
if
sorry.
you click that, it'll open in PowerPoint.
Okay.
Usually, sometimes. Okay, so then on a graph, where would a price ceiling be? Below or above equilibrium? Right. So that's saying that your prices hit this and then they can't go any further. And as we know, by looking at like this point and this point, we have a shortage because the quantity supplied is smaller than the quantity being demanded. Right? And then what about the price floor? Above equilibrium.
How about that?
Yay!
Let's go.
Now you're on your own.
I think it's the wrong one.
Oh, did I open the wrong one?
Yeah, I think
Chapter
this is
four.
chapter 4. Well, I think, let's go to the end and see if we cover it.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're talking about Japan. Okay. Let's try.
I don't know.
View show or view some.
Let's do it. Here we go. Okay. Here's the thing. Alright, so does everybody understand, like, what causes a price ceiling and a price floor and the consequences of it? Okay. Go ahead.
Is only the government that can do that, or can other, can a company do that, or
Why would a company
I,
want to do
there's
it? Madeline?
Can you give like an example of like I just don't, I can't think of like an item like for the, one above the equilibrium.
Yeah, so we've been talking about that at the end of class yesterday. And the example, one of the examples is a farmer. So with farmers, if the price is, if the price is too low to where they're not actually making a profit off of their crops, they don't have an incentive to produce. And if they're not producing, we don't have food. So the government might say, well, if we set the price at this point, will you produce? Yes, of course, because we'll be making a profit. So then what they ended up with is the quantity supplied is bigger than the quantity demanded, so they have a surplus. So the government actually pays some farmers not to farm so that they don't have the surplus and kind of work that way. Does that make sense? To where we need some farmers to produce the food, but if every farmer is producing food, we're gonna end up with a surplus because the price that they have it set at is too high for us to pay.
What does the government mean? Like, who exactly? I mean, when people say the government, I just sort of think of like Obama himself, but
Yeah, it's him,
I
just
don't.
blame everything on Obama.
well, like, is it like actual the like federal government, or is it like
Mrs. Frame, do you know?
state government?
Repeat the question, blame what on the government?
When they're setting like price controls, who in government is doing that?
Well, there's a, like, not president of economy, but, director of finance. It's a committee, a subcommittee of the government. I mean, I'm sure the president is involved a little bit, but there's actually, like, there's a Department of Agriculture, there's a Department of Foreign Affairs, and I'm sure it's a department of the government who makes a lot of the decisions.
But like, does the state government have much to do with that as well, or is it all just like?
That's a
do they
good
have-
question. Like, our governor is Governor Pence, and I don't know how much the federal government plays in the decision-making process for each state. That's something I'll have to look up too. But, because each state, like, we live in an agrarian state, which means a farm state. So, in the Midwest is where the country gets most of its produce, most of its vegetables. California and Florida, they have a lot of produce. I don't know if those are regulated differently than other states or not. That's a good question.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Frame.
Yeah. I don't know how tough I was, but.
Well, I was just wondering.
Yeah.
I kind of don't know if that's gonna count as test, but.
That's fine. If I don't know the answer, it's not on a test. So I make the test. Okay, so Adam Smith, we talked about him a little bit in chapter 4 in his invisible hand theory. So who remembers what that is? Sarah's read it and she's like, I think I can answer that. Go ahead.
He said
Go for it, I'm tired of talking.
he said that each buyer and seller in the market is guided by an invisible hand to promote an end which was no part of his intention.
Right, so what does that mean?
I don't know.
Read the next paragraph.
When each one of us makes decisions to buy or sell to achieve the best outcome for ourselves, and when our decisions are coordinated by the free market, we end up achieving the best outcome for everyone.
Right. So basically, each time we make a decision to buy a product, we're making the best decision for ourselves, but then looking at the big picture, those small decisions each of us are making are actually making, beneficial for everyone in the market. Does that make sense? A little bit. Read your textbooks, it's in there. Okay.
So like if you're buying food for yourself, like that benefits yourself because
Mhm.
you're eating food.
Right.
But then how does it benefit everybody else? Like it
The
makes
producers
sense, producers like
They get the money because you're buying their
But
food.
then like what about the other people? Like not just the producers, but
Well, if there's demand for a product, then producers are gonna continue to produce it, right? If there's no demand for it, they're not gonna produce it anymore.
Is this all for 5?
Yeah, there's a little bit in 4, and then this is, I think, in 5 as well. Okay, so markets don't always work as perfectly as Adam Smith thought, but they are amazing instruments. So he was looking at a market economy where buyers and sellers are both benefiting. There's other types of markets, and they don't always work as perfectly as he's implying here. Okay, so price controls, we went over this, we'll just go over it real quick. Sometimes the market price is not always the politically expedient price, and governments sometimes interfere in markets to prevent the market equilibrium from being reached. So government intervention creates a whole new set of problems because of misallocation of resources. And a price ceiling prevents prices from rising to the market equilibrium. So if you're on the basement floor and you're trying to jump, you can't go past the roof. Okay, so you can't go north. And then an example, an attempt to provide low-cost housing for the poor, the government may put a price ceiling on how much a landlord can charge for rent. The problem with that is, with prices artificially low, the quantity demanded is therefore greater than the quantity supplied, creating a shortage. And then the shortage has to be dealt with somehow, and people often end up on waiting lists to get the limited supply of housing then. So the solution the government came up with wasn't necessarily the best one, because now we have a lot of people waiting to get into a housing unit still. So the government has created excess demand, and then the producers who have the highest cost will not rent their apartments, because they would basically be paying you to live in their place, because they're not making a profit. They have to keep their price really low, so if it costs more than that to maintain an apartment, they're not gonna rent it out. They'd rather just take it off the market. Okay. Price floor keeps prices from falling below the equilibrium, so you can't go, so the government keeps prices above the market equilibrium value in order to raise the incomes of those producing the product. So in the farm example, in order to make farming profitable, they keep the price high. Now the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded, so we have a surplus, and normally the price would fall and we would be back at equilibrium, but with the price floor, the government prevents this by buying the excess supply. So in the example I was reading, I don't know if it was your textbook or one of my other books that I'm using as a source, it was saying that the government actually, like the excess that is being produced, the government buys and then just kind of sits somewhere. So the government has paid this farmer to produce all this stuff, but consumers can't afford it, so there's a surplus, and there's a surplus that's just kind of wasted. Madeline?
Okay, so like, when, say you need like a kidney, like those, like it's hard to find like one that's like with you, but they're still expensive, so like, it's demanded highly and it's like really high, how would it look good?
So you're saying with the example of a kidney where demand is high and they're willing to pay any price?
Yeah, cause like it's like,
Yeah, so if we skip ahead and look at elasticity, it would look like this,
oh, okay,
where it doesn't matter the price, your demand is still the same.
okay.
So price floor. So if we look at the crop corn, this would lead to a huge pile of excess crops that no one wants to buy because they can't afford it. So by helping producers get higher prices, the government creates a surplus of a product that we can't afford to buy, and it's all at the taxpayer's expense. So when we say the government is paying for something, it's every time you pay taxes, we're paying into the government's pot of money that they're using to pay for this. But you guys can talk about that in government. So the government has changed their policy for crops slightly. So now instead of having all of that excess crop go to waste, they pay some farmers not to farm. Therefore, they won't have a surplus of corn. Okay. So instead of having 5 farmers all producing at maximum produce, they ask like 1 or 2 of them, hey, don't produce, here's some money. That way there's no surplus created. So they're artificially bringing them towards equilibrium, in a sense. Okay. Now we're going to start talking about elasticity. This is chapter 5. And elasticity describes how changes in one variable affect another variable. And there's all different types of elasticity. We're going to start with demand elasticity. We'll also talk about supply elasticity, and then there's some others we'll get into. So demand elasticity refers to how much the quantity demanded changes when the price changes. So we've looked at many graphing examples, and we can see like if demand changes, shifts, and we're here, but we want to know how can you tell like how much is going to move or how much demand is going to be affected by price change. I added a helpful resource last night to Edmodo on elasticity. I recommend you watch that. It's only about 10 minutes long, but it's very clear, gets you thinking a little. Okay, so elasticity is a measure of responsiveness or sensitivity of the quantities bought and sold to changes in prices and other influences on buyer and seller's plans. When we talk about elasticity, it's a units-free measure of the responsiveness of the quantity demanded of a good to a change in its price when all other influences on buyer plans remain the same. So responsiveness is basically determining the slope at a certain point on a curve. However, we can't always compare slopes because units of measurement can be unrelated. So if we're comparing apples to oranges, they might be different units, or if we're comparing point shoes to soda consumed or being produced. So this will make more sense on the next slide. Okay, so how a change in supply changes price and quantity. So on the left, we have a large price change and a small quantity change. So we have our demand curve, our original supply curve. An increase in supply moves us out here. And you can see that the price has fallen quite a bit. There's a large price change. But then if we look at the quantity change from here to here, now we're at this bottom point on the curve, it's a small increase in quantity. Okay? Question? Okay. And then a small price change and a large quantity change will look like this. So demand curve, original supply, then we shift out here. So here the price was 20, here it's 15. So there's been a small fall in the price, but then when we look at the quantity, our original ones here, there's a larger change in the quantity. Does that make sense? So we're looking at the changes in both variables. So for small changes in price elasticity of demand is the proportion by which the quantity demanded changes divided by the corresponding proportion by which the price changes. So this is actually a mathematical equation. Note, we use the absolute value, so we drop negative signs. Because demand is downward sloping, the elasticity will always come up as a negative number, but we're not interested in whether it's negative or positive, we're just looking at the absolute value. So if you remember from your math classes, heaving elasticity, the lines on the other side means it's the absolute value, right? Okay. So that math I just said is right here. So calculating elasticity, so the price of elasticity of demand equals the percent change in quantity demanded. So percentage sign, we know what that is. Triangle means change. And then Q is referring to quantity, P is referring to price. And then the AVE is average, so the quantity average. So if you look at this example, which is in the book, they have, at their original point, pizzas per hour is the quantity, and then price in dollars per pizza. So at the original point, pizzas are $20.50, and then at this new point, actually this is the new point, it's $19.50. So to calculate, we will do some math. Okay, so we have the price change in quantity over price change in price. Right? So we have the change in quantity, we're going from 9 to 11, right? Oh my gosh, just make sure I'm doing this right. I go through every chapter and make fancy notes. Okay. So we can do quantity. So Q, we have 9 plus 11 divided by 2. So that's getting the average. So 9 and 11 is 20 over 2 equals 10 pizzas. And then for the change in Q over Q average, we would use, did I do that upside down? Alright, so in my example, when I did it first, I started with price, let's just go there. So 2050 plus 1950, and those are the prices, divided by 2. We get $20 as the average price. Okay. And then the change in price, we go from 2050, alright, we just, okay, so 2050 minus 1950 equals $1. So the change in price is $1, right? So moving from 2050 to 1950, the difference there is $1, the average price being 20. And then back to the quantity. We take our change in price over the price average. That's $1 over $20, right? You guys still with me? If we multiply that by 100, we get 5%. Is this making sense or not really?
Why did you multiply that?
Because it's percent. So let me, if you guys all look in your book, you can follow along too. Chapter 5, 0, page are you? Okay. tomorrow. We'll review a little bit on Monday for the test. Use the study guide online and then your vocab homework. The study guide.
Is it including chapter 1?
Yeah, there's not, it's gonna be more heavily weighted to chapter 3 and 4.
We'll also have like the basics.
So is any chapter 2 online?
It depends on how far we get, I'll let you know Monday. And then don't forget, I can be a public reading tomorrow.